Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the Emerging Market Retail Podcast. Today, it's a very special episode because we have a new member. So,
Yay!
yeah, we are so excited to have Simone Valvers in our team. So, welcome, Simone.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me join.
Yeah, why don't you share a little bit of your background?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Just like you two guys, I'm also working on nanostore retailing in emerging markets. I started last year in September, and I'm working also with Professor Jan van Soo. I'm very happy to join the team and to have the chance to meet all the guests.
Exciting. Yeah. So, Simone, today you are joining us for our first episode together, where we will be talking about nanostores in rural areas. So, Camilio, can you give us a preview of what we're discussing today?
Oh, of course, Rafa. So, as the audiences may know, there are different types of mom and pop stores across the globe, that we also call them nanostores. And probably most of the research and of course, and in practice, focuses on serving urban nanostores, right? Because, well, of course, we have the largest number of these stores in cities. Nonetheless, these stores, these nanostores, are crucial for rural areas, right? It is very unlikely to find a wholesaler or a large supermarket in the middle of a province, right? So this family-owned business usually become very relevant, not only for the shopkeepers, the families that use this as a source of income, but also for consumers that live in these areas, and these, of course, become their way of buying their daily goods, right? So this is like the setting. And today, well, the idea is to have a discussion with an expert about the challenges of serving these stores.
Indeed. And so today we have with us Professor Christopher Tang, who is a global expert in this space. He has published several papers on rural nanostore supply chains, and he's a professor at UCLA. So we are really excited to have this insightful conversation with him.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. An exceptional guest is with us for this episode. I am referring to UCLA Distinguished Professor Christopher Tang. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Among other research-related positions, Professor Tang also serves as Senior Associate Dean of Global Initiatives at the UCLA Anderson School and as a faculty director of the UCLA Center for Global Management. So it is quite a privilege having you on board for this episode, Professor. Well, we have been following, of course, your work. And regarding rural nanostores, I would like to ask you, Professor, can you explain the main challenges that a supplier should be aware of when serving rural nanostores?
Thank you. Well, before I answer your question, maybe I tell you a little bit why we need to focus on the nanostores as a research topic. I think in research, a lot of companies, marketing professors, OM professors, they've studied traditional retailing and now even online retailing for a long time. But I think that's in the context of inclusion and income equality. And I think the nanostores have always been neglected. But yet, they play a very important role in emerging markets. So therefore, I think it's a very exciting area that for the researchers to explore this area as well. Now, coming back to your question, Camilo, in terms of the challenges that nanostores are facing, it really related back to the supply chain context. So supply chains is really talking about managing material flows from the suppliers all the way to the manufacturer to retailers. information flows also between from the maybe two ways, from the suppliers all the way to the retailers, and also the retailers provide the information back up the supply chain in terms of what demand signal going to be. And the third one is related to financial flow, how to get the money out from the customers to the retailers back to the suppliers, right? Now, for the traditional, more big supermarkets in the urban area, they have ITs, they have roads, they have telecommunication, they don't have problems. But for nano stores, in the small stores located in rural areas, especially in emerging markets, they face challenges in all three dimensions. First, in terms of material flows, they do not have the infrastructure that the urban area has in terms of roads, in terms of telecommunication, and sometimes even electricity. So therefore, it's difficult for the suppliers or distributors to ship the products to the store. Second, information. Well, a lot of times they don't even have electricity, let alone in terms of smartphones, but it's getting better. We'll come back to it later. In the case, how do they get the information flow in terms of how to place an order? Maybe by phone, maybe word of mouth. And the third one is also financial challenges. Well, a lot of the time, this kind of transactions in rural area is cash-based. If they have to collect the money in cash from the customers, then they have to pay on cash on delivery. But in many emerging markets, because of all the stores, they serve the local community. A lot of the time, they may not collect the cash on selling. They may have a credit with the local customers. So as a result, there is a delay for them to collect the cash, but then there's a problem. That would trigger the problem of the cash-to-cash cycle, because they are waiting for the cash deliveries, and yet they have not, they collect the cash to pay the supplier. So therefore, there's a cash-to-cash cycle. The timing is not insane. So as a result, they have difficulty buying the product, getting the orders placed, and also getting the shipments.
So how are they surviving, Professor?
Well, I think that's for these nano stores to excel, to succeed, to sustain, they need to overcome all these three key challenges. So I call this the frictions, the trade frictions, that is caused by the lack of infrastructure, the lack of information infrastructure, and also the lack of financial support. So in order for these nano stores to succeed, we need to find ways to overcome these three hurdles. That's where there's a golden opportunity to conduct research in this area as well. Now, let me explain maybe one key concept that may be meaningful to the audience. I use one word, aggregation, to aggregate. Because a lot of all these stores are really small. They cannot buy large quantity. Without a large quantity, no one wants to serve them, because the distributors and wholesalers say, hey, you only order small quantity, but the shipment cost is outweigh the benefits of serving you. So therefore, a lot of time, they don't want to serve them. So therefore, the amount of product they can order and also the price they charge, actually, according to research, is actually more expensive on a per unit basis than the urban area. So poor people actually end up paying more. So in that case, it's not sustainable. So how do they survive? So I look at different nano stores in different countries. There's one common theme for those who survive. For those who didn't survive, I don't know why they didn't survive. But they do have something in common. It's aggregate. They have to work together. They have to work together to make it sustainable. So for example, in the Philippines, some of the nano stores on the roadsides, the quantity is too small, but they are everywhere in the little street corner and all this. But they can work together to actually group the order quantity together, then they do group buy. So there is a very successful program. They aggregate all the order together, then they can buy large quantity. But then, in order to reduce the shipment costs, so in that case, they get the order, they can maybe getting quantity discount, but the shipment is a problem. because they are dispersed in different locations. So usually what they do is a hub and spoke system. So that means they delegate one store to be the local point to receive all the orders, and then they contact the local store to come and pick it up. So hub and spoke, right? Now, this kind of system has been existed for a long time, even in big stores. But this one, all the act as a small one. Now, this one is also being used in Africa for Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola also used the local people to actually ship it to one location, and then you use I call micro logistics provider. So they use maybe deliver to each little stores by bicycles, even sometimes by little carts, such that they make it easier to do hub and spoke. Yeah. So I think that is very important. There's a group buy to organize the purchase quality together, so you have a bigger discount, give them incentive. Then how do you get it shipped to each individual store? Then in the case you use hub and spoke. So in that case, I call aggregation.
Yeah, I think, thank you for your elaborate discussion. I have a follow-up question because, we of course have been reading your papers as well, and you already touched upon some of the alternative distribution strategies to supply those rural nanostores and to reduce the cost for serving them. And you also elaborate more in your papers on, okay, what are the different ways and how could we set this up? Could you elaborate a bit more on this?
Well, maybe I can use the example about the Philippines as an example. They have many stores called sari stores. So it's little stores. But then they cannot really have the place order because in the rural area, actually, the distributors or the wholesalers, they do not even exist. Why? It's like the banks, because they are not profitable to serve them. So therefore, banks do not exist, distributors do not exist, wholesalers do not exist. Then how do they make ends meet? Because these sari stores, they are set up on the little homes. They just open a little window. I think in Mexico, some area, they also have that. They sell maybe chocolates, they sell little things. But then there's a problem. How do they actually can generate a living so that they can survive and also serve the local communities? So what they end up come up with the idea is actually there is a social entrepreneur to help them. It's called Happy Noi. It's like the happy aunt. It's like your aunt. So what they do is that the different stores, they work together. They say, hey, if we do it by ourselves, we have to travel a long distance on our own. Then it's not economical, right? So therefore, and also the cost is high without the quantity. So they decided to work together to group all the information together, and then you delegate one store as a sole collector to collect all the orders. Then they aggregate. Then they place order with a distributor in the urban area. Then it's far away, but it's okay because they aggregate. So in that case, the distributor says, okay, your total order quantity is large enough, but I can only ship to one location. After that, you are on your own. Then it's okay, let me take the responsibility. So in this case, this little store, it will become a local wholesaler, basically, effectively. So they've collected all the quantity in bulk, and then they contact the local stores to come and pick it up. So therefore, they can share the cost. They share the cost of transportation. They also have the group buy, reduce the ordering cost. Also, in some cases, they may also use this local wholesaler to reduce the package size. So for example, I've seen it would be like many of them, they go to Costco. Let's say in the US, they buy in Costco, maybe ship it to different countries because it's cheaper. Then what they do is that they open the big package and then reduce the package size by a local small package because the local customers want, they don't have refrigerator. So in that case, they cannot keep the chocolate for a very long time. But it's okay. They cannot afford to buy big cans of linked chocolate, but they would like have two. So in the case, you can package in two. So like in some emerging markets, you can see that they may sell chewing gum in small packages or chocolate in a small amount in quantity. I've seen that in Mexico in rural area as well. So in the case, to make it this local wholesaler to make it possible for the local nano stores to sell, and also help them to sell in small packages, such that customers can afford to buy, and also at low cost.
Thank you so much, Professor, for this insightful answer. I want to continue discussing innovations in this rural nanostore space. And one of the innovations that we know you have been paying a lot of attention to is that of Alibaba with the Lingshutung initiative, the retail management platform, through which shopkeepers can replenish their inventories in rural areas. Alibaba is also using this to deliver some packages that are sold in their online platform. And in return for this service, the customers also are able to let's say start buying packages online. So it's kind of a win-win-win situation. So more broadly, can you tell us about technological innovations that you find interesting in this space, and what are the challenges that they are addressing?
Thank you. Well, in China, actually, this has been a very exciting development. So I think that it started from the concept of common prosperity launched by President Xi. So the idea is that is now the people live in the city, our big companies, they're making big profits. And yet the people live in the rural area, they're making little profits, if there's any, right? So therefore, it's in a way to help the rural area to grow the economic growth as well. Now, so this one, I think last year, I think that's some of the big firms, they were asked or encouraged them to donate the profit to rural area. So this including the Alibaba, Tencent, JD.com, which is another second largest e-commerce, and PDD, which is they mainly serve the local smaller cities in China as well. Now, in terms of technology, China is leading on the smartphones because they found that although a lot of smartphones are used in the city area, but then in the rural area, they have no access to smartphones. Now, smartphones are very important. One is communication, obviously. Second, is also smartphone actually can leverage the online payment system, the mobile payment system. So this would be like Alipay as well as WeChat Pay. So once you have the payment system, customer can buy and customer can sell using the mobile payment system. That makes a big difference. Without that, you cannot digitize the rural area, right? So that's point number one. So now the transactions can be done through the smartphone. Then the next issue is that how do you get the store to set up to actually have this kind of omni-channel, order online, pick up in store, right? So even in rural area, it seems impossible, but the smartphones make it possible. So what they do is the following. So Alibaba, even in terms of JD, they try to help the rural area, the local stores, nano stores, to digitize the operations. So now with the mobile payments, so in that case, most of the packaging, they all have the barcode and QR code. So what they do is that they just need to develop a scanner and also a computer system in a store. So they say, okay, we help you set it up and also digitize your operations. So in the case, whenever they sell one items, they can just scan the item and then automatically record it, right? Then after that, they also can build in a simple system. Whenever the inventory below certain level, they can trigger the order. Then also using the IT information system, they can actually aggregate all the local stores to do the aggregate purchasing, right? So in that case, again, they can use aggregation as well. So the IT system enable them to have aggregate the orders. Then in that case, the vendors can ship it directly to a local area. So for example, JD.com did exactly that. So basically, JD.com in the rural area, they have a local JD vendor or promoter. So this store is again would be the collector, the local wholesaler, receiving all the orders, and then the local other nano stores will go and pick it up, right? So in that case, through this technology and also enable them. Now that is more on the transactions, the physical flow, yeah. But then there's also in terms of information flow, because right now everything is tracked using this mobile phone, using scanners. So in that case, the vendors also know in terms of which product is selling well, which product is not selling well. That help them to forecast better as well. So that is also a big win for the vendors as well. And the shipping, also by aggregating the order, will reduce the shipping costs. Then the last one is on in terms of the cash flow, cash. So that is really major problems now. But in this particular case, it's very interesting. Once you have the information flow and the financial flow, then actually Alibaba, they built the AI, the artificial intelligence. They can actually forward predict using the past sales data, using your past payment systems. They can predict whether you are a credit-worthy as vendors or not, or the stores. So in the case, they can also allocate some credits, line the credits. Now, this area, when the banks are not really easily accessible, and yet through the Alibaba's system, they can use AI to actually detect which store is actually more trustworthy, can actually give them a line of credit such that they can buy the products and then pay later.
Thank you very much. I think those are the opportunities are really huge of implementing those systems. But what do you think are the main challenges for the rural stores to adopt those new technological developments?
Well, thank you. Based on this study, recent study by other researchers, not by me, it's a paper published in AER, American Economic Review. It shows how important this topic is. It's the Insight magazine journal, and they've actually studied 100 villages who adopted this system. What they find is that within 1 year, the number of people, customers who actually switch from offline to online using mobile phone went up 14% within 1 year. So that's good. And also sales of the nanostores actually go up because it's easier for them to pay, easier for them to order smaller quantities because they aggregate them together. So in the case, getting the customers to embrace e-commerce, it was the easy part. Also getting the product delivered is also improving. So for example, JD.com in China, they use drones. Now they can fly the drones up to 15 kilos, around over 30 pounds. They deliver all the way for 50 kilometers radius, right? They can do that. So that is delivering is not a problem. Getting the operation set up is not a problem. Get the sales not a problem. But the major challenges they find is that selling into the village is the easy part. But helping the rural area, the farmers, selling the product out is a problem. Because that's the transportation and also how to order and is very difficult. So they found that there is a statistically significant increase in sales in the rural area through e-commerce, but there's very little transaction coming out. But don't worry, there's another company, Tencent, who's famous on the mobile commerce. They came up with a platform called WeCountry. Their WeChat Pay, the WeChat, and also WeCountry. Using this online platform, they enable the local producers, like farmers, to advertise their crops and the harvest they have and sell to the local community. So in the case, with the local transportation, local community, they can get fresh produce at a lower price, is fine. So I think that moving forward, having this system set up the way like the WeCountry, PDD, which is the number 3 e-commerce in China, may be able to partner with them such that they can actually sell the fruits and crops to other cities. Because PDD only focus on not tier 1 city, is tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, such that they can help them to set up the selling platform in the local area, such that the transportation cost is manageable. So therefore, I'm quite excited about how technology can help in terms of selling into the rural area and now actually sell within the local villages.
Awesome, Professor. That sounds incredible for us, particularly for me, that I come from a developing country, Colombia, and that I have been living in Mexico for many years, and that I've seen those challenges. I have observed those in the field. But and some of the things that you describe seem very futuristic, with drones and other things. And well, I will say that, and you also already mentioned that one of the main challenges, is the limited cash availability, not only for nanostores, but for any micro and small firm. So in one of your papers, you describe 4 different types of microfinance models, one is the self-help groups, other ones the community banks, peer-to-peer networks, and these other like microfinance institutions. So my question, Professor, would be, if you were to pick one, which one of those 4 do you consider that is the one that will have more impact on this type of micro firms globally? Well, in emerging market, which is like 80% of the world.
Well, Camilo, this is a billion-dollar question. I think right now, the financial institutions, they already realize that the market is saturated in the urban area. Everyone wants to get into the rural area because that is the last frontier. How to make money off them? Of course, they also would need to make money, right? But they how to create win-win. Now, so group lending started by Grameen Bank, it shows very good, but it's difficult to scale up because the operation cost is quite high. Microfinancial institutions, yes, you can do microloans, but it's also difficult, right? Because there's also the operations is either not clean or difficult to manage. But then that's where the microfinance using fintech, I think, is more promising. Now, but then how to get the fintech working out, that remains to be seen. But I do see that these now emerging markets, they are really embracing the mobile finance, and also using technology. Now, we'll see how the cryptocurrency is going to play out. And you look at El Salvador, it's the first country embrace the cryptocurrencies. Now, there's also crypto lending. In terms of that may be actually, I'm not suggesting using Bitcoin, but I think that using the technology such as blockchain, that may show that is some kind of trust in terms to track the transactions of the nanostores from the customers, such that you can actually develop AI or machine learning to see which one is credit worthy. So in that case, to reduce the lending risk. Because right now, that is not really difficult for them to know. Now, that's why the information is key. If you look, to get information, that's why you need to keep track of all the transactions. So I think the blockchain has a potential to serve as a mechanism to actually track the transactions, and also using machine learning and AI to figure out which source has earned the credit score instead of the traditional credit score, using the actual transactions, right? So you look at, in terms of the cryptocurrencies, now it's been used in El Salvador, and also that's now Venezuela, as well as Brazil. So I think as more emerging countries adopting mobile finance using the fintech technology, gradually there is a chance to bypass the traditional banking system. Because the traditional banking system is too archaic, it cannot really reach out to the rural area, because they feel that they're not bankable, because the operating costs to operate a financial institute in the rural area is too expensive. So therefore, they need to rely on the mobile technology as well as the blockchain technology. Hopefully the cost will come down. So in that case, they can use information as a substitute for credit score, such that they can actually provide the lending a much more efficient way.
Professor, if I may follow up, probably this is not something that would work well in rural areas, but what role do you think suppliers can play? We have recently been doing some work with companies in Latin America who are financing with short-term trade credits the nanostores that they're serving, and we have observed some really drastic improvements in the amount of product that they're able to deliver as a result of these trade credits. So I wonder whether you have thought about the role of the supplier and what you think the role of the supplier can be in the future.
Absolutely, Raphael. In terms of information, besides the mobile finance to track all the transactions for all brands, the suppliers will know that in terms of transaction for their own brand, right? So therefore, you have documented a very successful case in Mexico, the Bimbo Group. They use the red Quibo, providing in the mobile digital platform. So in that case, they can do the transactions without credit cards, right? So, but I think that this has become more common now, but that is not limited to the own brand. So it is like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, they use a Soccer Watch in Africa, then provide the trade credits for the nanostores. But those are only limited to their own brands because they can only observe the sales for the own brand. Now for the blockchain, I'm talking about actually I can track the entire stores for all brands transactions. So in that case, it's slightly different. So that is like Alibaba. Alibaba actually utilize all the information for the vendors and for all brands, not just for limited brands. So I think depending on the scope and scale, if you're thinking about in terms of limited particular brand, the supplier can say, oh, Raphael, I know that you have been buying my brands and I want to provide you line of credits to give you the incentive to sell more of my products, right? But from the store standpoint, they cannot just sell your product, they sell other product as well. So therefore, I think it depends on the scale and scope. So for limited scale, yes, absolutely. The supply can provide the financing because the risk is low, because I've been doing the transaction with you. But if they want to grow for the entire ecosystem, if you will, then in the case, I think some kind of technology to track all the transactions using blockchain AI could scale up the operations.
Thank you, Professor. So throughout this episode, you have provided a broad overview of so many different innovations that can be used to build the rural nanostores of the future and their supply chain. So if you have to pick one or two of these innovations, which ones do you think will be the most crucial ones in the following years to shape these nanostores of the future in rural settings?
Well, thank you. If I have to pick one area, I think that in terms of we need to improve the infrastructure. But I think this is a challenge for many developing countries because after all, we still need road, we still need access. Not just getting the product in, it's also getting the product out, right? So that's why there are a lot of farmers in the rural area, they have difficulty selling out in the market and they sell direct, right? So I think the infrastructure is very important. So that's why I think that you can see the economic growth is so phenomenal in China because of infrastructure. So if India needs to improve the economic growth, infrastructure is unavoidable. So same as many African countries as well. So I think this is the step one. The step two would be like after that, the technology will become more mature as well. So I think that's the bottleneck, if you will, is the infrastructure.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing so many insights with us and our audience. We are really, really excited to have you and have, as always, enjoyed our conversation with you today. So we again appreciate very much that you shared these minutes with us and your extensive knowledge.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Tilburg University.